if you're the royal family, and I know this for a fact from talking to people close to them, right, there's a lot of wariness about this. Right? They don't trust them, period. They just don't trust them. I mean, Harry to them is like Brooklyn Beckham is to the Beckhams now, right? I don't think anyone could be a worse son than Harry. Brooklyn, I take my hat off to you, son. For spoilt brat, entitled behaviour. And the common theme is two American women, but we'll come to that later.
You can't trust Meghan and Harry. That's the point. Even if you think you've got a deal, the palace will be shocked that they will renege immediately because they have no advantage of reconciliation. They've got no advantage of ending their vendetta.
There are moments in royal commentary that cut through all the headlines, the polished statements, the carefully crafted responses, and suddenly everything feels different. What you're about to hear is one of those moments. Because what Piers Morgan recently shared about the atmosphere inside the royal family isn't being presented as ordinary gossip. According to him, it reflects what people close to the king are privately saying, and the picture he paints is far from encouraging. Stay with us, because what's reportedly happening behind palace doors has sparked plenty of discussion. For weeks, stories have been circulating in parts of the media suggesting tensions may finally be easing. Some reports have even hinted that the royal family could be opening the door, at least a little, for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to reconnect with the family. One commentator recently entered the conversation with a very optimistic outlook, arguing that the mood has changed. She suggested Harry is no longer carrying the same frustration as before, and that a future visit to the UK with the children isn't just possible, it's becoming the most likely next step. She even described it as the next logical step. But Piers Morgan says the people he speaks with inside royal circles are painting a completely different picture. And according to him, it couldn't be further from that hopeful narrative.
The king, as a father, would love to see his son, right? Obviously he would. He doesn't want to have this on. Charles really doesn't like confrontation.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't like everything to be chaotic and dramatic and combative. He would just like it to be calm so he can get on with doing a very good job, by the way, as our monarch. So I don't think it really, for him, he's like, well, obviously I'd like to see my son. But the problem is everyone around him is like, well, how do you trust him, sir? How do you trust this son of yours who every single time you see him in the last few years, everything gets leaked?
To understand why this debate has attracted so much attention, it's important to look at where Harry and Meghan stand today. This is no longer viewed as a temporary family disagreement. Years of public tension have created a situation that many observers believe has become increasingly difficult to repair, with major consequences for everyone involved. When Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties, they introduced what they described as a new direction built around independence and public service. They relocated to California and secured major business opportunities, including deals with Netflix, Spotify, publishing companies, and speaking engagements. The goal appeared to be creating a successful life outside the monarchy, while showing they could build something significant on their own. Some of those projects moved forward, but others faced challenges. The Netflix partnership produced several releases, though many commentators expected a larger cultural impact. The Spotify partnership eventually came to an end. Harry's memoir generated enormous worldwide attention and prompted widespread discussion about his relationship with the royal family. Meghan's As Ever lifestyle brand received mixed reactions following its launch. The podcast eventually came to a close, and many of the Hollywood opportunities that had been predicted never seemed to fully develop. As a result, commentators continue to debate whether Harry and Meghan are now placing greater attention on Britain and the royal family once again.
Their track record for sort of exploiting the Queen was such that, she used to have her lady-in-waiting present when they came and brought the children, stop them taking photographs which they could subsequently use.
Returning to the one stage that consistently attracts worldwide attention. According to reports discussed by Piers Morgan, this is exactly what has created concern within royal circles. Rather than seeing these developments as a hopeful turning point, some insiders reportedly view them with caution. One of the questions being raised is what Meghan hopes to accomplish with any future visit and what role such a trip might play going forward. It's also worth looking at Piers Morgan himself, because many people immediately point out his long-running disagreements with Harry and Meghan, and that's no secret. He has openly shared his opinions for years, but the bigger question isn't whether he supports them. It's whether the people providing him with information are genuinely well connected. That's where much of the discussion begins. Piers Morgan has long been reported to have a close friendship with Queen Camilla. He has also been associated socially with Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, and was recently seen attending an event alongside Beatrice's husband, Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi. Supporters of Morgan argue these relationships give him access to conversations that rarely become public. Based on what he says he's hearing, the message coming from those circles is clear. Trust between the royal family and Harry and Meghan has been seriously damaged. That's a remarkable claim. According to this account, the issue goes beyond simple caution.
But wanting to exploit their royal titles, I think it stinks. And I think what King Charles should do, he should just strip them of the titles. Let them go off and be, celebrities, that's fine. But don't do it in the name of our royal family.
It points to a relationship where confidence has been deeply affected after years of public disagreements. That naturally raises an important question. What events led to that level of distrust? And what could it mean for the future? For many commentators following this story, one name remains at the center of much of the public discussion, and that name is Meghan. Another perspective recently entered the debate through Australian journalist Bronte Coy, who has appeared on several royal discussion programs with a notably positive outlook. She has suggested that Harry spending more time in the UK again is becoming increasingly realistic and may eventually become the family's natural direction. On the surface, it's easy to understand why some viewers find that argument convincing. She presents her case confidently, describing Harry as someone who may now be driven less by frustration and more by a desire to reconnect with his home country and allow his children to spend more time with their British relatives. It's certainly an optimistic picture, centered on reconciliation and rebuilding relationships. But critics argue that it overlooks everything that's happened over the past 6 years. They point to the televised interviews, the Netflix documentary, Harry's memoir, and years of public disagreements that place the family's private matters into the global spotlight. Because of that history,
I know from speaking to people around the royals, they're very concerned about this, right? They just think she will come in and she is getting desperate with her failure of her business stuff, and so she knows she needs to be seen.
Desperate equals dangerous.
Some commentators question whether returning to royal life could really be as straightforward as simply picking up where everything left off. Suggestions that Harry and Meghan could quickly resume a highly visible royal role have been met with skepticism by many royal observers. According to Piers Morgan, that's exactly why he challenged those predictions so strongly. As Morgan put it, the British royal family is not a consolation prize. His argument is that after years spent building an independent public identity outside the monarchy, returning would not be a simple matter. From his perspective, relationships affected over such a long period cannot automatically return to what they once were, regardless of changing circumstances. There was another topic during that same discussion that also caught plenty of attention. It involved claims about a previously unseen photograph said to show the late Queen Elizabeth II sharing a special private moment with one of her young great-grandchildren. According to the account being discussed, the image has never been released publicly despite being described as a warm and meaningful family memory. That immediately raised fresh questions. If such a photograph exists, and if that relationship was as close as some have recently suggested.
Since she walked into Harry's life, it has been nothing but absolute chaos and toxicity. And I don't think the royals want that. I genuinely think they all sort of want to get along. Yes, they have their spats from time to time. Any family or group does. But they want to move together in harmony. And Harry and Meghan are the antithesis of that. So there is no point in bringing them back into this nonsense. There's just absolutely no point.
Meghan's podcast has fallen off the charts. She's been criticized for the content. There are rumors that her As Ever launch wasn't as successful as she considered it. Critically, With Love Meghan was not a success.
Many people wonder why it has remained private for so long. After years of documentaries, books, interviews, and public conversations about family life, some observers find it surprising that a moment like this has only recently become part of the discussion. It honestly leaves a lot of people raising their eyebrows. But the comparison with Brooklyn Beckham is what has really grabbed attention. When Piers Morgan brought up that example, he wasn't making a random remark. He was drawing a direct comparison about how he believes Harry is viewed within his own family today, and it's a striking one. Brooklyn Beckham, for anyone unfamiliar, is the eldest son of David and Victoria Beckham. Growing up, he had access to opportunities most people could only dream about: excellent education, valuable connections, and a platform built by two globally famous parents. Even so, many commentators have questioned whether those opportunities have translated into a long-term career that truly matches those expectations. According to Piers Morgan, that's the comparison some people inside royal circles now make with Harry, not as someone they see as a major threat.
This is not how royalty works. You can't just walk back in when you tried something else and it failed miserably. You left. And because of the very specific job that royals have, which is representing the government to a broad extent, it doesn't make sense at all for Harry and Meghan to just waltz back in as if nothing has happened. They can, yes, have familial relations with people, personal ones, but not dynastic ones anymore. They've left that behind. And the British public doesn't really want them.
But as someone who had extraordinary advantages and, in their view, hasn't made the most of them, someone whose decisions have created ongoing complications for the family and left relationships far more difficult than they once were. Some commentators believe much of that change followed Harry's move to America and the influence of a very different environment from the one he grew up in. Whether people agree or disagree with that view, the comparison itself sends a clear message about how some believe the mood inside palace circles has shifted. King Charles, by many accounts, would still like to see his son. That's hardly surprising, he's a father as well as a king. Family relationships don't simply disappear because of public disagreements. Reports have often suggested that Charles hopes for less conflict, greater stability, and the opportunity to focus fully on his role as monarch. His recent visit to America was widely viewed by supporters as a successful moment in his reign. Those close to him have described his focus as maintaining stability and carrying out his responsibilities. But one question reportedly continues to surface among those around the king. How do you rebuild trust if private conversations repeatedly become public discussion afterward? How do you comfortably reopen family conversations if details later appear in interviews, books, documentaries, or media reports? And how do you approach the possibility of Meghan returning alongside Harry when concerns about privacy and public attention remain such a major topic inside royal circles? Piers Morgan has also been very clear about his position on royal titles, arguing that they represent far more than ceremonial labels. His view reflects an argument that has become increasingly common among many royal commentators.
I absolutely despise philanthropy when it's used like this, because this really is a networking event for all the elites, isn't it? I am sick of seeing Meghan Markle and Prince Harry turn up to anything that they feel will propel them forwards. Remember what your mother did, Prince Harry. She was doing the charity work that was not cool, the charity work that people shied away from.
He questions whether Harry and Meghan should continue carrying royal titles while pursuing independent projects around the world without performing official royal duties. In his view, those titles continue to provide recognition, prestige, and opportunities that remain closely connected to the institution itself. Royal titles are more than names on paper. They carry history, tradition, and worldwide recognition. They can open doors, attract media attention, and create interest that few public figures receive on their own. Supporters of Morgan's argument believe Harry and Meghan understand exactly how valuable that connection remains. Critics often argue that without those royal links, they would simply be viewed as two well-known public figures living in California, one with a previous acting career and the other a former working royal building a new chapter outside the monarchy. From that perspective, the titles continue to strengthen business opportunities, public appearances, partnerships, and overall public interest. Morgan argues that this ongoing connection to the monarchy remains one of the biggest reasons their global profile continues to attract attention. That's why, according to Morgan, reports of a possible future visit to Britain have generated so much discussion. Some palace observers believe that if Meghan were to travel to the UK, there could also be business considerations alongside any personal or family reasons. Commentators have suggested that renewed attention could naturally bring greater visibility to projects such as the As Ever brand and other future ventures. Every appearance connected to the royal family immediately generates headlines around the world. Every new photograph or public appearance becomes another reminder of that ongoing connection. According to palace commentators, that's exactly why the institution remains cautious about how those moments may be interpreted. This concern is not new. In fact, Many royal watchers point back to the original arrangements made when Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties. During the Sandringham discussions with the late Queen Elizabeth II, the position was presented as clear.
This episode is about three things. A £1.1 million donation sold to the British public as personal generosity. It was not. A national broadcaster that confirmed a false version of events to me in writing when I asked them directly. And the very convenient timing of who actually told the truth, when and why. The BBC chose to confirm it, but here's what they already knew. The Glenn Begg Foundation transfer to BBC Children in Need was logged at the Charity Commission. That is a public record. It had been sitting there for 5 months by the time I asked my question.
There would be no permanent half-in, half-out arrangement. Either someone carried out official royal duties or they pursued an independent path outside the institution. The late Queen was widely respected for maintaining that distinction. After decades on the throne, she understood the importance of keeping those roles clearly defined. Yet years later, some commentators believe Harry still hopes for a version of royal life that preserves the recognition and access while remaining separate from official responsibilities. Critics argue that this would effectively reverse the original understanding reached during those discussions. Whether that's Harry's intention or simply public perception remains debated, but it's a subject that continues to generate strong opinions. The issue of trust stretches even further. According to people said to be close to the king, several private conversations between Charles and Harry have eventually become topics of public discussion, not through official palace announcements, but through interviews, books, documentaries, or media reporting connected to the Sussexes. King Charles has long been known for valuing privacy and discretion. Many royal observers believe that repeated public discussion of private family matters has made rebuilding confidence especially challenging. Some insiders now believe the royal family has reached an important turning point. In their view, the main question is no longer whether Harry might eventually return in some capacity, but how the family should manage the relationship moving forward. Harry still holds the Duke of Sussex title, yet many commentators believe there has been little progress in repairing the underlying issues that have affected trust over recent years. Let's focus on Harry himself for a moment, because amid all the discussion about Meghan and palace concerns,
I have long said the establishment are still protecting Prince Harry. At this point, I would argue, did he ever really leave? Today, I am showing you explosive proof of how the BBC lied to me. That is our national broadcaster that is paid for by us. And they lied to protect Harry. They lied to try and rehabilitate his image.
it's easy to overlook the person at the center of the story. At 41 years old, many observers believe he finds himself facing one of the most difficult periods of his public life. People who followed Harry before his marriage often remember someone very different. They describe a prince who appeared approachable, humorous, willing to laugh at himself, and deeply committed to charitable work, especially projects connected to the legacy of his mother, Princess Diana. Many acknowledge that he struggled with being known as the spare, but they also felt he handled that role with humor and determination that made him widely popular. Today, some commentators say they see a very different public image. Whether appearing at polo matches, official events, or carefully planned public appearances, critics argue that Harry often looks weighed down rather than fulfilled. They believe the public image being presented doesn't always match the impression many viewers take away, and for those who agree with Piers Morgan's comparison, that only makes the Brooklyn Beckham analogy resonate even more. Harry always knew his opportunity wouldn't last forever. Angela Levin, who spent significant time with him while researching her biography, has said Harry openly admitted he understood public attention would eventually shift as Prince George grew older and stepped into a more prominent royal role. Back then, Harry reportedly wanted to make the most of that limited window by creating something meaningful that would leave a lasting impact. Years have passed since then, and many royal commentators now ask what has truly endured. The Invictus Games continues to be widely recognized as one of his strongest achievements, while several other projects including books, documentaries, media partnerships, and entertainment ventures have received mixed commercial results or brought fresh public debate. Many observers believe Harry knows that period of unique public attention has changed.
Any meeting in America would not be about Harry desperate to see his dad, would not be about Harry wanting to introduce his children to their grandfather. That's an excuse, that's not the reason. The reason is Harry wants to remind the world, and particularly business people who are doing deals, that he is still part of this family. And so I think it's really a painful moment for the king to realise now that his son's using him.
Some who have followed his journey closely suggest that awareness is one reason discussions about spending more time in Britain have become more noticeable. They believe he misses home. Even many critics acknowledge that possibility. According to those views, Harry misses his country and, perhaps even more, the family life he remembers before relationships became so strained. It's also been suggested that he wants Archie and Lilibet to spend more time with their British relatives, including their grandfather, the king, and to experience the country connected to their family's history. For many people watching this story unfold, those emotions seem sincere. At the same time, every reported step toward rebuilding family relationships appears to come with difficult questions. Discussions often include issues such as security arrangements, access, public recognition, and the conditions surrounding any possible reconciliation, making the path forward far more complicated than it may first appear. So what is really driving this renewed focus on Britain and the royal family? Some commentators following the Sussexes believe the answer involves more than family alone. They argue that business opportunities in America have not developed exactly as originally expected. The intense worldwide attention that followed Harry and Meghan after stepping back from royal duties has gradually faded, and many believe their royal connection remains one of the strongest sources of continued global interest. From that perspective, any future visit to Britain would carry significance beyond private family meetings. Royal commentators suggest it could also reinforce public interest in Harry and Meghan's ongoing projects and public profile. Images connected to the royal family naturally attract worldwide attention. A photograph of Harry with King Charles, for example, would immediately dominate headlines. Likewise, any family photographs involving Archie and Lilibet would likely generate enormous public interest and remind audiences around the world that the Sussexes remain connected to the monarchy. Many commentators believe that kind of visibility continues to hold enormous value.
Harry and Meghan do live in delusion. It's how they've kept going, I think, this far, is that they have to delude themselves constantly as to their state in life. But they failed in Hollywood, they failed in the royal family, and they're going to try to fall back to the royals, but I just don't think that is a situation that will work at all, and they definitely will not be welcomed back, especially with the reign of King William on the horizon here at some point.
It reinforces familiarity, strengthens public recognition, and reminds potential partners that Harry and Meghan remain closely linked to one of the world's most recognized institutions. While no official source has presented this as fact, some royal observers believe Meghan would also understand the publicity surrounding any future visit. They suggest that public appearances, photography, fashion choices, and social media activity could naturally increase attention around projects such as the As Ever brand and other future ventures. Supporters of that theory argue this follows a pattern they believe has appeared before. Piers Morgan has said his palace sources remain cautious, believing that periods of increased pressure often lead to carefully planned public strategies. Meghan is frequently described by commentators as determined and persistent, someone who continues searching for new opportunities whenever previous plans change. That, they argue, is why some inside royal circles remain cautious. The question isn't simply whether Harry and Meghan visit Britain. It's whether the palace believes such a visit would primarily strengthen family relationships or create new public and commercial attention. Another topic that has attracted discussion involves a reported charitable donation connected to BBC Children in Need. According to media reports at the time, a donation of £1.1 million was presented as a personal contribution from Prince Harry, creating headlines that highlighted his support for a well-known children's charity. The story received considerable positive attention. A contribution of that size naturally created the impression of a significant personal gesture, and was widely reported as an example of Harry giving back while in Britain. However, some royal commentators later examined publicly available charity records and argued that the funding had been distributed through the Archewell Foundation, which had itself received funding from another charitable organization, the Glenbrook Foundation. Based on those records, they questioned whether the donation should have been described as a personal gift from Harry. Those commentators also pointed to correspondence involving the BBC, saying the broadcaster described the contribution as personal despite publicly available charity filings showing a different funding route.
You can't trust her. If she can take any word, she might use it, she might spend it somewhere, she could be paid something because she heard something they said that would be very helpful for her, to talk about it or do a film about it or do something about it. I think you can't trust her.
The charity records themselves had reportedly been available through the Charity Commission well before questions about the donation were raised. For critics, the issue isn't simply where the money originated. They argue it reflects broader concerns about how public messaging surrounding Harry and Meghan is sometimes presented. In their view, headlines can create one impression while the full background tells a more detailed story. Others believe the episode demonstrates that the Sussex name still attracts considerable attention from major institutions and media organizations, regardless of ongoing disagreements surrounding the couple. Whatever interpretation people choose, the discussion has become another example regularly cited by commentators examining the Sussexes' public image. Beyond the headlines, business discussions, and media debate, there is another side to this story that many people consider most important: the children. Archie is 7 and Lilibet is 5. They are growing up in Montecito, California, enjoying a comfortable life but living thousands of miles away from much of Harry's side of the family. That distance means less day-to-day contact with cousins, British traditions, and relatives they might otherwise know more closely. It also means growing up far from the country that remains an important part of their family's history. King Charles has often spoken about the importance of family throughout his public life. In recent years, he has continued carrying out his duties while navigating a complicated relationship with his younger son. According to people said to be close to the situation, he would still value opportunities to know his grandchildren better. Time continues moving forward for everyone.
I know from speaking to people around the royals, they're very concerned about this, right? They just think she will come in and she is getting desperate with her failure of her business stuff, and so she knows she needs to be seen. I mean, when was the last time you saw them with any A-listers? They're not. The A-list world's made a calculation. If you go with those two, you're never going to be invited to the real stuff.
Children grow quickly, family relationships evolve, and opportunities to create shared memories never stand still. Many royal commentators believe Harry sincerely wants Archie and Lilibet to have meaningful connections with their British relatives. And that remains one part of this complicated story that many observers see as genuine. At the same time, many observers believe the conditions surrounding any possible meeting make it much harder for one to actually happen. Questions about security, ongoing public discussion through the media, and requests that would require approval from multiple government bodies have all become part of the wider conversation. Some royal commentators have suggested Meghan may not be enthusiastic about Harry taking the children to Britain without her, while others believe she may also have reservations about making the trip herself because of the intense public attention it would attract. According to those commentators, requests for full police protection and official security arrangements serve more than one purpose. They argue the requests reflect genuine concerns while also creating a situation where, if those conditions are not met, the visit becomes far less likely. Whether that interpretation is correct remains a matter of debate, but many people following the story say they wouldn't be surprised if events unfolded in exactly that way. The palace, as always, has remained publicly silent. That's consistent with how the royal family has traditionally handled sensitive matters. They rarely respond to television debates, podcasts, social media discussions, or daily speculation. Instead, they allow the headlines to pass while keeping official comment to a minimum. Privately, however, Piers Morgan says the message from people close to the royal family is very different. According to his reporting, there is no expectation of a grand public welcome. Any future visit would reportedly be treated as a private family matter rather than an official royal occasion. If King Charles were to meet Harry, commentators suggest it would likely be a brief, private meeting without cameras or wider family participation. Reports indicate there would be no formal reunion involving Queen Camilla, Prince William, or Catherine, and no large family gathering with George, Charlotte, Louis, Archie, and Lilibet. In other words, If a meeting happens at all, many believe it would take place quietly and with as little public attention as possible. Even that possibility reportedly makes some people close to the king cautious. They believe previous private conversations have too often become subjects of public discussion afterward, whether through interviews, documentaries, books, or media coverage. According to palace observers, that's why rebuilding trust has become such a difficult challenge. Once confidence has been affected repeatedly, caution naturally becomes part of every future decision. The discussion surrounding the Sussex titles also continues. Some royal commentators believe that once Prince William eventually becomes king, questions about those titles could be reviewed again. While nobody knows what future decisions may be made, several observers believe William may approach the situation differently from his father.
I think it's time to strip the titles. Yes, your son will be upset, but he's been upset and a brat for years anyways. Just go ahead and deal with the latest temper tantrum and just get rid of the titles, because it is damaging Charles's reign for sure, and he needs to adjust and make sure that Harry can't do further harm with Meghan, because she's definitely going to try to sell. As ever there, the business is totally going to go bankrupt. But we shall see.
Those commentators argue William places strong emphasis on protecting the institution and ensuring that royal responsibilities remain closely connected to royal privileges. Whether that prediction proves accurate is something only time will answer. Looking beyond the family itself, many people believe this story has become about something much larger than one disagreement. It raises questions about trust, responsibility, and what happens after years of public conflict. For a long time, many believed distance and time might naturally ease tensions. King Charles has often been described as someone who prefers patience over confrontation. But some observers now believe that approach has reached its limits. According to Piers Morgan's reporting, those around the king are increasingly focused on protecting the institution itself. Their reported view is that any future relationship with Harry and Meghan must happen under conditions that safeguard the monarchy rather than create new public complications. That leaves the situation looking far more uncertain than some recent optimistic reports have suggested. Public conversations about reconciliation may sound encouraging, but commentators continue to point out that significant obstacles remain behind the scenes. Many believe this is no longer simply about hurt feelings. They argue it's about the importance of privacy, trust, and protecting an institution that has always depended on discretion. Meanwhile, Prince William and Catherine have continued focusing on their public responsibilities. Rather than commenting on ongoing family discussions, they have concentrated on official engagements, charitable work, and raising George, Charlotte, and Louis. Following Catherine's recovery from a serious health challenge, many royal watchers praised the way she gradually returned to public duties. Together, William and Catherine continue building a reputation centered on consistency, stability, and long-term service. Some commentators believe that contrast has become increasingly noticeable. They argue that while William and Catherine focus on official responsibilities, Harry and Meghan continue attracting attention through a very different style of public life. Whether fair or not, that comparison has become a regular feature of royal commentary. Stepping back, this entire situation also highlights the resilience of the monarchy. When Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties, many predicted lasting damage to the institution. Yet years later, supporters argue the monarchy has remained steady, with King Charles continuing to carry out his responsibilities during a particularly challenging period. For Harry and Meghan, however, commentators continue debating whether life outside the royal family has delivered everything they originally hoped it would. Some believe certain opportunities have fallen short of expectations, while others argue their strongest connection to worldwide attention still comes through their relationship with the monarchy. According to Piers Morgan, the greatest concern inside palace circles isn't necessarily Harry himself. Instead, it's the possibility that future family moments could once again become part of wider public narratives or commercial attention. Whether that concern is justified remains a matter of opinion, but it's one that continues shaping the conversation. That brings us to the biggest question of all. If you were King Charles, knowing trust has reportedly been tested again and again, how would you approach a future meeting? And do you believe Harry and the royal family will eventually find a way to rebuild those relationships, or has too much happened for things to ever return to what they once were? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with other royal watchers. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.